Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today I want to talk about the books I read in the month of February. There are a total of 6 books I read last month. 2 of these were mystery thrillers and I already did a separate review for them. It was Final Girls by Riley Sager and An Unwanted Guest by Shari Lapena. So I'll link that video somewhere if you want to check it out. And then the other 4 books, let's take them by the order I read them in. So the first book I read was Little Women by Louisa Alcott. I read this because the movie is coming to Denmark and it's coming out at the end of March and I wanted to read it before. Yeah, I did that. And this is actually only the first part of the book because I was looking online and at the other copies I saw, and this book seems so much thicker. And then I realized that the thicker book, which is called Little Women, actually includes also the second book in this series, which is Good Wives. Everyone knows this story and everyone feels like when reading it is like a warm blanket. It's just nice and cozy and goes into this with knowing that they're gonna love it because probably they grew up with it. I didn't. I remember watching a Japanese anime series about it, which when I was growing up, I really liked that. I don't think I've seen any adaptations, movie adaptations, so I'm looking forward to the one at the end of this month. So overall, I expected a little bit more of a heavier classical book, where this one, I think I would compare it to Anne of Green Gables by Lucy Montgomery. So in the sense that this is very an easy read and it's about girls growing up. But where I liked Anne of Green Gables much better, and where this one failed me a bit was that this one is so much steeped into religion and it's so much steeped into how to be a better girl, how to be a better woman, how to learn the good things, do the good things growing up. So it felt a bit more very sermon-y or preaching. It's like it was preaching me or teaching me these moral codes, which was very on the page and very, very put out there. So it wasn't anything that you came to the conclusion of. It was really spelled out basically for you. And it made, because almost every chapter deals with a different of these moral codes, or I don't know how you would call them, these lessons you learn as a child in how to be better. I think it made this book a bit choppy and a bit episodic. Now, of course, this goes away a bit as we go into the story, but I just felt a bit disappointed by it. So it's basically, this is not what I thought it's going to be. Knowing now, I'm not sure I'm going to read the rest of these. I think I'm going to watch the movie, of course, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to enjoy it. But unfortunately, this was not for me, and it's such a shame because everyone loves this. And I think people who grew up with it really look back into it and reread it with nostalgia. But I just don't have any connection to it in that way. For a connection, a similar connection I would have to Anne of Green Gables, because I grew up watching that. But not this one. So I think I gave it 3 stars and I'm really disappointed I didn't like it. The next book I read was Darkdawn, the last book in the Nevernight Chronicles by Jay Kristoff. And this was the conclusion of this series, and all these 3 books, so Nevernight, God's Grave and Darkdawn, were just simply amazing for me. And I think I'm gonna do a separate series review for them. So I will leave it here. I don't want to spoil this series. I think a lot of people heard about it because it's very popular on BookTube. But I think Jay Kristoff did an amazing job here, not only keeping momentum and increasing, the stakes and developing the world and thickening the plot with each and every book, but at the same time, he did an amazing job with the main character, Mia Corvere, and her development. I love everything about it. It's such a unique world with a unique magic system, and it's this epic revenge story basically, and our main character is this amazing and really brutal assassin. So I think there's a lot of tropes here people enjoy in fantasy, and I can't wait to see what Jay Kristoff comes out with next. I think it's gonna be some sort of a vampire fantasy story, so I'm looking forward to that. But for now, I think apart from the series review I'm gonna do at some point soon, I'm gonna say that this one for me was a 4-star, the whole series, and I would recommend it in audio format. I think it was really well done that way. The next book I picked up, I listened to via my libraries app, and it was Heavy, a memoir by Kiese Laymon. So this book I picked it up because Mercedes from Mercy's Bookish Musing recommended it. I trust her recommendations because last year or the year before she recommended to me, to everyone, but she recommended to read Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson, and that was one of the best books I read last year. So when she recommended this one, I knew I'm gonna pick it up, and I'm happy I did, and I didn't wait because this book is absolutely amazing. So in this book, Kiese, he writes it in a second person to his mother, and it is a memoir about growing up a heavy black man or black boy in the US. And it is such a raw, emotional read. He details his growing up and how hard it was to live up to his mother's expectations. So the mother was this really bright woman, an academic, and her expectations of him were just impossible to achieve. So, where he describes the part where they had so many books in the house and the mother was always buying books but didn't have food, it kind of paints a great picture of how it was. But basically, his mother thought that preparing him in school and making him as bright as possible and as educated as possible is the only way for a black boy to survive in the US. So his childhood is just about, it's about abuse, both sexual, physical. It's about racism, and then we go into his adult life when he's a student and later a professor, where he faces institutional racism as well. And all these things combined with him being a heavy man. So he's overweight, and then he starves himself and becomes almost anorexic, and then he battles also, he's a gambling addict as well. And at the core of this is this really difficult relationship he has with his mother, where they really don't talk about things, and he really tries to, I guess, to come to grips with that relationship, but it's kind of hard, I guess, So overall, this was such a hard book to read, and it was hard to see and to read what he experienced as a child and also as an adult. This book, as he says it several times in this book, it's written for a black audience. So and later I think he said that it was really hard for him to put all these experiences onto paper, because of course he bared himself completely, and that is really difficult nowadays and all the time, I guess, actually. But I guess he does it to help other people in similar situations, and that was really brave of him. So it's hard to say that you enjoy a novel or on any book which deals with these different topics, but I think having these books out there is very important. And as he says, it's really helpful to others who are in similar situations. Apart from the contents of this book and what he experienced, it is also really beautifully written. So I think in the future I will buy this book, because listening to it I was like, oh, there's so many beautiful passages I would have lined or underlined and I couldn't. So I think I'm gonna do that at some point and reread it, and I will definitely pick up whatever he writes in the future. And I don't understand why this is not more popular on BookTube or more hyped or more mentioned. So I hope it's gonna get out there. It's written like 2019 or 18, I believe. So it's not that recent, but I think it deserves much more. It deserves to come out in the light much more, and for more people to read it and more people to hear about it. I give this 5 stars and I highly recommend it. The last book I read was Girl by Edna O'Brien. I picked this up because last year I read a non-fiction book about Boko Haram, and when I heard that there's a literary fiction book coming out which deals about the same subject, and specifically the girls who've been kidnapped by Boko Haram in Nigeria, I knew I will read it. And this one also is a short one. And since this has been put on the long list for the Women's Prize for Fiction for 2020, so I'm happy that I read it. So as I said, in this book, Edna O'Brien writes about these girls who have been kidnapped in Nigeria by Boko Haram, and they've been taken and used as basically sex slaves in this camp somewhere in Nigeria. So I knew about Boko Haram going into this from the news, but also from that book I read last year. So this is a fictional account. Edna O'Brien is an Irish author. She's in her 80s. I think she has an amazing backlist of books, and I think a lot of people seem to criticize this book because this is written by a white Irish woman who cannot be more removed from the story of these black Nigerian girls being kidnapped. And I think this criticism comes from the fact that these days we expect to read about these accounts from the source, but I think until there comes out a book written by one of these girls, I think this one is amazing and is an amazing place to go to. So I understand the criticism, but I also understand that I think Edna O'Brien was a great person and maybe the right person to write this story, because she not only did go to Nigeria, she's in her 80s, she not only went to Nigeria to interview these girls, but I think the backlist I mentioned, she written throughout her career about these really difficult topics. So one of her most popular books is Country Girls. I think that's also her debut, if I'm not mistaken, or one of her first books, which was actually banned and burned in Ireland, because when it came out in the 60s, it was really revolutionary, because I think she has written about female and girls and sexuality, and that was a big no-no at that time. And afterwards, I think she also has written about other difficult stories, I think, for example, about IRA as well. So I would definitely check out more of her books, and I'm happy I read this one. As I said, it is a difficult topic. It is written in first person, and we follow one of the girls who has been kidnapped, and it's such a difficult read because, I mean, these girls were young girls. I mean, they were in their teens, 14, I mean, I think different ages, but they really didn't understand what was happening, and they didn't really grasp the concept of rape and violation in the same way maybe someone in the West would. And just detailing all those horrible things which happened to them in that camp, and how they were treated and what was done to them and to the women of that camp, basically. It was absolutely horrific. Edna O'Brien did an amazing job recounting that experience. And of course, we have to admit that, yes, she did her research. So of course, even though this is a fictional book, I think it's really much steeped in reality and in what actually happened there. So in the first part, we see the Miriam being kidnapped and how her life was in this camp, and then we have a second part where she escapes, and that part was not my favorite, and I think because it was written in such a weird way for me, because she wasn't really aware of her surroundings, and she was almost like hallucinating of hallucinating that escape because they were wandering out in nature under this heavy burning sun, and there was just nowhere, no one there to help them, and it was such a weird experience. And then the third part is after she was found and reunited with her family and what happened from there. And this story is also more special because she has a child from that camp. She was given as a wife to one of those boys. It details also how it was to come back to society as a mother, with a child which was viewed as a tainted child, and a child which is going to bring like unluck to everyone, and especially to her and her family. So her trials and her hardships didn't end with her escaping this camp and being found. So overall, I gave this book 4 stars, not 5 because of that middle part, which I think was just a personal thing for me. And I would really recommend everyone to read this. I think for such a short book, it's like 220 pages, something like that. It packs such a heavy punch, and you can really tell that it's written by an author who is really good at writing, and I think she's done an amazing job at it, basically. So I'm gonna stop talking about it now. So 4 stars, highly recommend it, and I hope this is going to also be on the shortlist for that Women's Prize of Fiction this year, because I think it really deserves to be there. So these are the 4 books I wanted to talk about now. I think even though I felt that I was in some sort of reading slump this month, overall I read some really amazing books, and both the fantasy book Darkdawn was great, and the memoir was amazing, and also this one. So I think overall this was a much better reading month for me than January, and I hope I will continue reading some amazing books in March as well. But let me know if you have read any of these, or if you have heard. I think especially Darkdawn is pretty well known in the fantasy world on BookTube, but also Girl by Edna O'Brien is gonna be really in the focus, I think, for many people now, because a lot of people read these prize long lists and short lists. So let me know if these will go on your TBR pile as well. And I guess this is where I leave you now. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.